Welcome to the History in Focus channel. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss more videos like this one. The giant African land snail is one of the largest in the world, able to exceed 8 inches, and has spread across several countries. A couple ran outside wrapped in a blanket when an earthquake struck the city by surprise, catching residents at the most unexpected moment. This is the Erta Al volcano in Ethiopia, famous for emitting an intense blue glow caused by the burning of sulfuric gases over the lava, creating a surreal appearance at night. Fred Bauer, creator of the Pringles packaging, died in 2008 and had part of his ashes placed inside a Pringles can, fulfilling his request. Beluga whales seen from below have such a graceful shape that, in the water, they resemble mermaid silhouettes. John Carpenter and Rob Bottin appear behind the scenes of The Thing, observing one of the animatronics created for the film's practical effects, which became some of the most iconic in horror cinema. A tongue-eating louse lives attached inside the mouth of the carpenter fish, replacing the animal's tongue after draining it, one of the most curious parasites in the ocean. Tesla employees placed a sign in the window saying, "We hate him too," endorsing the criticism directed at Elon Musk. A group of teenagers from Detroit volunteered to serve as pallbearers for homeless or familyless military veterans, ensuring they received an honorable farewell. A member of the Ku Klux Klan is protected by a police officer during a rally in Austin, Texas, when officers form barriers to prevent street confrontations. The last drawing made by a schizophrenic patient before dying, a raw expression of fear and mental disorganization recorded in frantic lines. A baseball team formed by prisoners played not just for sport, but for their own lives. Their executions were postponed as long as they continued winning games. A jaguar dives to retrieve food, a rare behavior recorded in captivity, since these felines usually hunt in shallow rivers and do not tend to swim so deep. Walrus costume worn by actor Justin Long in the film Tusk, where the character is forced to transform into a creature resembling a walrus. This is a direct comparison between a human skeleton and the much more robust skeleton of a gorilla. This is what happens when a Coca-Cola bottle is left exposed to the sun for an entire month due to the degradation of sugars and dyes from the extreme heat. Fauja Singh, born in 1911, became famous for running marathons at 100 years old and completing a mile in 12 minutes. He died at 114 after being hit by a vehicle. This man is not a police officer. He is part of one of the most powerful Mexican cartels, using tactical gear to intimidate rival groups and protect cartel operations. The A-10 Warthog, a United States ground attack aircraft, uses a cannon capable of firing up to 4,200 rounds per minute, each designed to destroy armored vehicles. Paris police discovered a clandestine cinema in the catacombs in 2004, equipped with 20 seats, a bar, a dining room, lounges, and full lighting. In 1985, after a boat sank off the coast of Nigeria, divers searching for bodies found a survivor who had been trapped in the dark for 60 hours. An Inuit hunter from the Northwest Territories in Canada, wearing wooden goggles with narrow slits to reduce the strong glare reflected by the snow. The surviving stairs that led people out of the World Trade Center are preserved as the actual path used by those who managed to escape alive. The final selfie of Andrew Macaulay, recovered from the flash drive found after his disappearance, shows his last moments as he attempted to cross the Tasman Sea. Spanish archaeologist Manuel Esteve Guerrero smokes a cigarette while wearing a Corinthian helmet he discovered in 1938. In 1985, Princess Diana visited British troops in Germany and surprised everyone by climbing onto an armored vehicle. Photographers lined up to document the nuclear tests at Bikini Atoll in 1946, posing in front of the equipment that would be used to record the operations. Before GPS, drivers could call a navigation center where attendants consulted huge maps and gave detailed directions over the phone. Model Anna Nicole Smith, 26 years old, beside her husband, oil magnate Howard Marshall, 89 years old. Whale oil in an old bottle changes color under ultraviolet light, displaying a bright blue effect caused by natural compounds reacting to the special illumination. Moran Bevan was hired by a circus after losing her husband, and despite the cruel nickname Ugliest Woman, she worked for years to support her children. A hiker watches the eruption of Mount St. Helens in 1980 while standing on Mount Adams, witnessing the immense ash cloud expand before him within seconds. A baby owl runs through the grass during its early development phase, when it still cannot fly and uses its legs to explore the area around the nest. This iceberg flipped upside down and revealed its smooth electric blue base, a tone created by intense pressure and wave erosion. A girl finished a basketball game on asphalt with enormous blisters on her feet, the result of hours of continuous friction and intense heat. In the early 20th century, T-shirts began being sold as practical garments created for single men who did not know how to sew, offering a model without buttons, without seams, and easy to wear. A photo taken at the Museum of Torture in Guanajuato, Mexico, shows an old nail-covered chair used to inflict extreme pain on prisoners. This is the region affected by the Deepwater Horizon disaster, where the platform exploded in 2010 and released 3.19 million barrels of oil into the Gulf of Mexico. A lighthouse was built on a rocky pillar in the Westman Islands of Iceland, guiding ships that cross the region with strong seas and intense winds. A fire whirl formed during a blaze in Hungary, a rare phenomenon created when intense heat and strong winds make the flames spin like a tornado. Kate Smith writes a message on the side of a torpedo during the war, a symbolic gesture that boosted troop morale as the weapon was prepared for use. Leonard Thompson became the first human to receive insulin, a milestone that inaugurated effective treatment for type 1 diabetes and forever changed the course of medicine. Dustin Gordon, a Columbine High School student, was shocked to learn that the shooters responsible for the attack on the school were actually his friends. A fox fell into a lake in Germany and froze during the winter, being left in a block of ice to warn residents about the danger of walking on thin surfaces. Three-dimensional crosswalks create an illusion of obstacles on the road, making drivers reduce speed without the need for speed bumps or additional signs. During 2020, at the height of the pandemic, some priests used small spray bottles to launch holy water from a distance and baptize babies safely. This is a behind-the-scenes scene showing how the famous Windows 10 wallpaper was actually created, using light, smoke, and a real set. In a backyard in the United States, a wet T-shirt hardened quickly after being left outdoors during sub-zero temperatures. The electrician suffered a 14,000-volt shock at work, and his eye displayed this pattern caused by the intense passage of electricity. In 1938, the Elephant Comet surprised customers at the Trocadero in London by approaching tables as part of a restaurant attraction. Chinese panda caretakers wear panda costumes so that the cubs do not associate human care with the smell or appearance of people, ensuring a safer reintroduction into nature. Vickers Close in Wales, England, is considered the oldest continuously inhabited residential street in Europe. Its construction began in 1348. Brock Lesnar greeted the boy who defeated his son in a youth wrestling match, a moment recorded at a tournament in the United States. The power lines over Lake Pontchartrain in Louisiana appear to sink into the horizon, creating a clear view of the Earth's curvature along the water's surface. Nuns from the 1960s observe a woman walking by wearing a short dress, a hat, and a straw handbag. In 2012, a Burger King employee posted a photo with his feet on the store's lettuce. The internet identified him within minutes, and in less than 20 minutes, he had already been fired the same day. This is what a guinea pig looks like when it is pregnant. During the approximately 60-day gestation, it can produce up to 4 pups per litter. During World War II blackouts, a farmer painted white stripes on her cow to make it visible at night and avoid collisions on dark roads. A 1959 McDonald's menu shows classic items such as hamburgers for 15 cents and French fries for 10 cents. This is the border between the United States and Canada, marked by a perfectly straight clearing that cuts through forest and hills for miles. An Irish farmer found a bog butter block, weighing about 50 pounds, buried on his property, preserved for centuries in the moist soil. The creation of the famous recycling symbol by Gary Anderson, who designed the logo at 23 years old in 1970 during a contest. In Turkey, garbage collectors created a library with books they found discarded, organizing hundreds of volumes for residents to read. The young gorilla sat beside the ranger in Congo after losing its mother, seeking comfort. The scene was recorded in Virunga Park. 2 boys detained for theft appear beside a police officer in London in 1872, a time when children were punished in the streets for minor crimes. A rare sign from the McMurdo Station in Antarctica appears installed on a vehicle. Such items are difficult to obtain since they come from remote bases on the frozen continent. The grenade cut in half reveals its internal structure, showing the mechanism that releases the explosive charge after the pin is removed, and the detonator is activated. Steve Jobs replied to a fan in 1983 saying he did not sign autographs. Years later, this typed letter was auctioned and reached the value of $400,000. This woman fishing off the coast of New Hampshire caught a giant bluefin tuna weighing about 1,000 pounds, a rare feat even among experienced fishermen. The work Black Sun, created by Damien Hirst, is a huge disc made with thousands of dead flies, assembled to explore themes of life, death, and decomposition. This is Chris Espinoza, the longest-serving Apple employee who joined the company in 1976 at 14 years old while the company still operated in Steve Jobs' garage. Tim Curry, still in costume as Pennywise, enjoys a break during the 1989 filming of It to Smoke a Cigarette. In January 2007, Russian President Vladimir Putin brought his Labrador to a meeting with the German Chancellor, who is known for being afraid of dogs. Theodore Roosevelt wrote on February 14, 1884, that "the light has gone out of my life," after losing his wife and his mother on the same day in New York. A fire sky was seen in the United States when clouds illuminated the sunset, creating intense orange tones that made the horizon appear ablaze. A Civil War veteran, then 116 years old, rests on his deathbed in 1959, still holding a cigar between his teeth. On a beach in Suffolk, England, a boy found in 2023 a stone that archaeologists identified as a 40,000-year-old Neanderthal axe. A grasshopper was infected by a parasitic fungus that took over its body and grew out of it, a common process in humid forests where such fungi control insects. In Texas, a medical center allows transplant patients to take their own removed hearts, preserved for study and remembrance after surgery. A man convicted of murder was displayed in a wooden cage in China around 1930, a punishment used to expose criminals in public places. A photo of a German mother crying after discovering that her captured son did not survive in a Soviet Union prisoner of war camp. Waitresses at Oktoberfest in Munich, Germany in 1928, displaying the traditional mugs before serving the festival crowd. The last photos of Freddie Mercury taken by his partner Jim Hutton at Garden Lodge in London on August 28, 1991. The teeth of a wild orca appear intact, while an orca in captivity shows worn teeth from biting the pool edges, a common habit caused by stress. A flying saucer-shaped gas station appears in Kiev in the 1980s, displaying the futuristic design typical of Soviet Ukraine. A lady from Tripoli poses wearing luxurious garments and detailed jewelry, revealing the elegance of the Libyan capital in the early 20th century. Refrigerators from 1910 functioned like large wooden cabinets, combining elegance and practicality by keeping food cold with ice blocks, displaying today an irresistible vintage charm. The Gympie Gympie plant grows in Australia and is feared because a simple touch releases toxic hairs that cause intense pain, capable of remaining on the skin for up to 9 months. Queen Elizabeth II drove herself on public roads until her 93rd birthday, stopping only after Prince Philip took away her driver's license in 2019. The remora, captured in Havana Bay, shows the suction disc on its head, a structure used to cling to larger fish and travel long distances in the ocean. These underwater roots were exposed after the water level dropped, revealing the twisted structure that had remained hidden at the bottom of the lake for years. The Yungas Road, or Death Road, was built in the 1930s by Paraguayan prisoners and is one of the most dangerous in the world. A Filipino baby was displayed in a human zoo in New York in 1906, part of colonial exhibitions that placed native peoples behind fences for public viewing. A bird sanctuary rescued a blind owl whose eyes reflect bright dots, making them resemble a starry sky. The iconic birthmark of Mikhail Gorbachev, often commented on for its singular shape, curiously resembles the outline of a small Siberian archipelago. Here is the final stretch of the Great Wall of China, where the immense medieval fortification meets the sea in the Shanhaiguan region, marking its easternmost point. A watch recovered from the Titanic is shown to have stopped at 2:28, marking the moment its owner fell into the water afterward. The dog Laika was sent into space by the Soviets in 1957 inside the Sputnik 2 capsule, fulfilling a one-way mission and becoming the first animal in orbit. The assembly line in Wolfsburg in 1938 shows workers building the first Volkswagen Beetles, which would mark automotive history. Here we see 3 judo fighters after a competition, but the man on the right is Osama bin Laden, who years later would become responsible for terrorist attacks against the United States. The Spitfire airplane made its first flight in 1936, and only 32 years later, the Concorde appeared in 1968. A gas station in New York in the 1920s displayed gasoline at 9.5 cents plus tax, portraying the beginning of automotive culture in the expanding city. Barack Obama appears in a photo of the basketball team at Punahou School in Hawaii, where he played as a guard during the 1970s. This is the vehicle with the highest mileage in the world, having traveled an incredible 3.3 million miles over 52 years. This ghost traffic jam was forgotten in a Belgian forest for 70 years, formed by cars abandoned by American soldiers after the end of the war. A man surprised doctors when tests showed a huge ball of hair in his stomach, a rare case of Rapunzel syndrome that had to be surgically removed. A park in Paris looks full of hills, but the ground is actually completely flat. The elevations are merely illusions created by geometric paintings. Alex Honnold climbed El Capitan without ropes in Yosemite National Park, ascending the 3,000-foot wall in 2017. King Charles appears at his 1948 christening beside Queen Mary, born in 1867. 3 distinct generations united in a single portrait. Carmen Miranda performs on the program CBS Radio Elgin Christmas Show in 1944, during the peak of her international fame when she was one of the greatest music icons. Here is Tira, a zebra with a rare genetic mutation called pseudomelanism, responsible for its irregular stripes and dark spots, creating a unique pattern. In Moka, Japan, there is a train station built in the shape of a locomotive, combining creative architecture and homage to local railway history. A drought emptied Lake Jablanica in Bosnia, revealing in 2012 a forgotten cemetery that had remained submerged for more than 7 decades. The face of an ant seen through a microscope reveals tiny structures, sensory hairs, and detailed mandibles that look like they belong to a monstrous creature. Valentine Tapley promised never to shave again after Abraham Lincoln was elected president in 1860. He kept the promise until he died in 1910. Teeth are shaved into thin grooves to receive veneers, a common process in cosmetic dentistry that creates space for the laminates and ensures better fixation. The Stockholm telephone tower gathered more than 5,500 lines, creating an aerial network that connected the city before the arrival of underground cables. A forest ranger poses inside a huge bald eagle nest used to show the real size of these structures built high in trees. The mouth of a leatherback sea turtle reveals rows of inward-facing spines, an adaptation to hold gelatinous prey, but one that looks like it came out of a horror movie. A photo of Jacob Miller, an American Civil War soldier, with a wound caused by a gunshot. He survived with the bullet lodged in his head for 31 years. An elephant calmly enters a supermarket in Thailand, walking between the aisles in search of snacks and frightening customers as it explores the place. This is a doctor who helped control plague outbreaks in the electoral district in 1905, riding his zebra through the streets of Nairobi, the capital of Kenya. A rare spherical cloud formation was seen in Japan when moist and stable air created a perfect globe in the sky, an unusual phenomenon that lasts only a few minutes. The 10 Lysenko brothers who served together in World War II survived the conflict and managed to return home in the early 1950s. The size comparison between this woman and the enormous fossilized dinosaur leg displayed in a museum shows how gigantic some of these creatures truly were. Students from Pittsburgh celebrate atop the Cathedral of Learning during the 1960 World Series, watching the game from a privileged view over the stadium. A tadpole seen under an electron microscope, showing tiny structures that are invisible to the naked eye. The future of New York is depicted in a 1920s illustration imagining colossal skyscrapers, multi-level suspended roads, and aircraft crossing the sky. This bottle contains wine preserved for 1,700 years. It was discovered in Speyer, Germany, and is considered the oldest intact bottle of wine in the world. The terracotta warrior shows precise details on the soles of the shoes, sculpted during the Qin dynasty in the 3rd century BC, revealing the artistic care of the craftsman. The RT-64 radio telescope in Kalazin, Russia, was built in the Soviet era to support missions destined for Venus and Mars, as well as to serve space research. Serial killer Velma Barfield appears in her death row cell at Central Prison in Raleigh, North Carolina in 1984. A 1-centimeter aluminum sphere struck an aluminum block at about 15,000 miles per hour, creating a crater similar to those caused by meteorite impacts. Apollo 16 astronaut Charles Duke left a photo of his family on the lunar surface in 1972, where it remains to this day. Hitler Youth members serve as assistants to the Luftwaffe during training in Germany in February 1943. This is Hans Island, located in the Nares Strait, known for being the only point of land border between Canada and Greenland. Dave Kuntz during his walk around the world in 1970, a journey that totaled 14,500 miles and required 21 pairs of shoes to complete. A cannonball remains embedded in a Roman wall since 1870, a direct remnant of the Italian Unification Wars. This photo appears to capture an ordinary summer day in an American neighborhood, with a man playing with the neighbor's children. But the adult pictured is the serial killer Ted Bundy. A fragment of dinosaur skin, approximately 70 million years old, preserved in rare detail, was recently discovered in Hell Creek, Montana. After the end of the Korean War, 21 American soldiers refused repatriation, remained in North Korea, and years later ended up moving to China. Ukrainian President Viktor Yushchenko before and after surviving an assassination attempt by poisoning attributed to Russia. Chindogu is a Japanese concept in which inventors create curious and almost useless objects designed to solve simple, everyday problems in impractical ways. Beneath a McDonald's in Rome lies a surprisingly well-preserved Roman road, displaying even ancient skeletons along the path, all protected under glass panels. This is the impressive appearance of the Himalayan mountain range, seen directly from the International Space Station, revealing the extreme terrain that stretches for thousands of kilometers. The director of the Belgrade Zoo calmly talks to Sammy, the chimpanzee who had escaped, managing to persuade him to return home in 1988. A United States Marine operating an M2 .50 caliber machine gun equipped with a large magnification scope during the Vietnam War. In 1902, a miner trapped in a coal mine wrote a farewell letter to his wife, reporting lack of air and leaving final messages for his children. The Beach Boys posed beside a Santa Claus in 1963, sitting in front of a classic hot rod shortly before becoming one of the most influential groups in music. A team of thieves dug a tunnel in Berlin in 2013 and broke into a vault, taking more than $10 million in gold and jewelry, and to this day, no one has been found. The granddaughter of the King of Persia appears seated beside a friend in a portrait taken around 1900, revealing the fashion, posture, and feminine style of Persian nobility. Fingers became extremely wrinkled after harvesting mangoes without gloves, a reaction caused by prolonged contact with the fruit's sap, which severely dries and irritates the skin. This is what sunset looks like from space, with orange light touching the atmosphere as Earth's shadow advances over the planet. The $10,000 bill, displaying Treasury Secretary Salmon P. Chase, was the highest value note ever put into circulation in American history, today a collector's rarity. New York blacksmiths install a section of the World Trade Center antenna at 1,650 feet high, hovering over the city in 1979. The morning glory is a rare phenomenon in Australia in which long roll clouds appear aligned in the sky at dawn, forming perfect waves seen from aircraft. Jackie Kennedy says goodbye to John F. Kennedy for the last time in 1963, while young Caroline touches the coffin during the funeral that moved the world. An impressive sequence of whale vertebrae appears clearly under the icy waters of Svalbard, Norway, revealing the preserved skeleton in the shallow bottom. A preserved great white shark ended up abandoned in a decommissioned wildlife park in Melbourne, where it remained forgotten inside a huge tank. This is Lee Miller, an American combat photographer taking a bath in Adolf Hitler's bathtub in his apartment in Munich, Germany. This is a knocker, someone who was paid 6 pence a week to wake workers in London in the 1930s using a tube to shoot dried peas at windows. The British Concorde fleet gathered at Heathrow Airport in 1986 to celebrate 10 years of operations, displaying its iconic supersonic design. Soviet soldiers wait behind the fence at the moment they are liberated by the United States Army from a German prisoner of war camp in France in 1944. The largest tuna ever recorded was an Atlantic bluefin tuna caught in Nova Scotia in 1979, weighing an impressive 1,496 pounds. Tom Cruise sitting atop the Burj Khalifa without any safety harness during the 2011 filming, displaying the boldness that marked his most iconic scenes. In data centers across Europe and the United States, technicians invite priests to bless server rooms to prevent them from crashing. Steven Seagal in his early years, in the mid-1970s, when he was still building his martial arts career before becoming famous in cinema. The arrival of the first computer of the Norwich City Council in 1957 marked a decisive step toward digital modernization. A diver in the Silfra Fissure in Iceland touches both the North American and European tectonic plates at the same time, a point where the continents separate underwater. A massive platform base from the United Kingdom is transported by tugboats to the installation site, 1980. An English boy found an elephant hawkmoth caterpillar, a species that uses large eye-like spots to scare predators during its summer cycle. These are passengers boarding a flight on the enormous Zeppelin airship, considered at the time the most luxurious form of aerial travel. The barrier built by this resident completely saved his house from flooding in Arkansas, keeping the property dry while the entire surrounding area was overtaken by water. The crew of the Challenger space shuttle walks toward the launch in 1986, unaware that it would be their final mission. This is a billboard in Harrison, Arkansas, widely considered the most racist city in the United States. Trucks carrying enormous logs crossed North Bend, Washington in 1943, revealing the strength of the American logging industry during the war. The oldest Greenland shark ever recorded, estimated to be about 500 years old, continues swimming through the icy waters of the North Atlantic. In 1981, the bully of Skidmore, Ken Rex McElroy, was shot to death inside his truck in front of dozens of witnesses, but no one ever spoke, and the case remains unsolved. The last known photo of Anne Frank, 2 months before she and her family were discovered and arrested by the Nazis during the occupation in the Netherlands. Extremely weakened British soldiers appear shortly after being liberated from a Japanese prisoner of war camp in 1945. The ocean sunfish is born the size of a tiny grain, but grows to more than 6 feet in adulthood, showing one of the greatest growth leaps in the marine world. In 1945, Technical Sergeant William E. Thomas and Private Joseph Jackson pose with shells marked as Easter eggs for Hitler. Los Angeles appears as a rural area in 1901 and, 100 years later in 2001, emerges with skyscrapers and intense urban expansion. A basketball player in 1927 appears wearing a mask and knee pads created to prevent injuries in a sport that was still testing forms of protection. A 1938 Colt .38 revolver was modified with a small camera that took a photo every time the trigger was pulled. The only known photograph of the United States Supreme Court in session, recorded in 1937. In July 1945, a B-25 bomber lost in the fog struck the Empire State Building in New York, causing a fire and killing 14 people. A pure copper sulfate crystal, grown by a man over 2 months, developed a perfect geometric shape and intense blue color. A scientist in the rubble of Chernobyl in 1986, wearing protective gear to measure radiation right after the explosion that destroyed Reactor 4. The former mansion of Mary J. Blige in Hollywood Hills ended up abandoned and destroyed. Once listed for $7 million, it became a graffiti park until it was foreclosed and resold by the bank for $3,186,570.